Hello. Okay. Cuckoo, a horror written and directed by a Tilman Singer, this being his second feature movie and my first experience watching a film directed by Tilman Singer. I'm not aware of him, but I have been looking forward to this movie down to the positive response it's received on social media, and that we've just been getting some really powerful and effective movies within the horror genre over the last couple of years, and ones that are really sort of experimental and kind of left field, you could say, and sort of just really kind of taking a gamble and just sort of really kind of taking risks with doing something different. And this is one of those movies without a doubt. And like another one of those most recent horror movies that we've had that I really liked is Longlegs. But we have had some really strong, powerful horror movies within the last couple of years now. And so yeah, I was really looking forward to checking Cuckoo out. So the film follows a teenager who moves to the German Alps to live with her father, but becomes disturbed by strange occurrences as her father's boss embroils her family in a sinister plot. And just like a lot of these recent horror movies that we've had over the last couple of years, especially Longlegs being the most recent, they do a really good job with Cuckoo at capturing a certain era of filmmaking, and that being the 60s, the 70s, and it's done beautifully through the cinematography. But it's not just captured, that era of horror B-movies from the 70s is not just captured through the cinematography, but also within how the horror is presented on screen. Like, there are certain moments within this movie when it comes to the horror that were very creepy, were very chilling, and it's just down to the way in which they played out and they were shot, and it really sort of, they did a good job in those moments at capturing those kind of 60s, 70s horror B-movies. And this is a very deranged and bizarre experience, but it never really falls into B-movie territory. Like, it teases it, but it doesn't completely fall into B-movie territory. There's almost like this restraint there. Even though this is a very wacky, bizarre, weird experience, it's almost like it was afraid to just go over the kind of the limit, over the edge, you could say. And that was a little bit frustrating, because this entire experience, Cuckoo, was incredibly weird, but as a result I found myself really enjoying it. The movie has this very kind of twisted sense of humour running throughout it, which I found very effective due to it being not too prominent, and a lot of that was just down to how it was utilised within the story. It had this sort of like wry sense of humour about it, and it's all achieved through the very sort of subtle gestures, through the performances, as well as the subtleties within the writing. I really like the sense of humour throughout this movie because it kind of eases you into what is a very bizarre, weird, odd story. And I think it's how that humour is utilised with the characters and through the writing, which is, for me anyway, kind of really eased me into this very bizarre experience. And another aspect within this movie that really helped ease me into what is a very odd and bizarre story is the performances, especially Hunter Schafer as Gretchen, our lead, this grieving teenager. Through her performance, she does a really good job at balancing the horror and the humour, and she just adds this sort of weight behind it. It's very nuanced, but it's just down to how she handles and carries her character through this very bizarre experience, which allowed me to kind of remain immersed, even as the story evolved and it became even more bizarre and wacky. It's down to Hunter Schafer's performance that kind of really kept me locked in. Like, there's this certain kind of weight to it, there's a groundedness to it, and just how she would deliver the humour in certain moments, and then as well as the horror, as like I said, as the story would evolve, this sort of blend of different tones I thought she handled beautifully within her performance that allowed me to remain immersed, as well as the more emotional beats when it comes to this character and what it is she's experienced within her past and how she's handling that. I just felt like the emotion is heightened, it's intensified through her performance, and it's very brief. You get it in very brief moments with this character when she shows that emotion. She just balances the humor, the horror, and that kind of the emotional journey that his character is going on beautifully. Dan Stevens is another standout here when it comes to performances. Now, I've got a love-hate relationship when it comes to Dan Stevens. There have been performances that I've absolutely hated by Dan Stevens, but ones that I've also loved. For example, I really liked him in The Guest. I absolutely hated him in Godzilla x Kong, but I really liked him here. Like, again, like Hunter Schafer, he gives us a very kind of nuanced performance where you've got this blend of silliness, the bizarreness, as well as the horror and that kind of sadistic aspect of a character. It's all there, but very nuanced, which I just found incredibly mesmerizing. And it's also through these performances where they do a beautiful job at capturing that kind of 60s, 70s aesthetic, that vibe and tone of sort of 70s horror B-movies. And I think not just, it's all achieved beautifully through the cinematography, at the writing, as well as the performances. Even though I really enjoyed this movie, it was very intriguing, and like I said, when it comes to the performances, I was just mesmerized with how Dan Stevens and Hunter Schafer, were bringing these characters to life. I just don't think the overall experience was as chilling or as horrifying as it could have been, just down to kind of the wackiness really and the silliness of its story. Cuckoo could have been a truly effective horror if it had maybe lent more into what it teases, which is this retro horror B-movie tone. And that kind of goes back to me talking what I mentioned about this restraint. There's this sort of restraint there. So even though you've got a very wacky, bizarre and odd premise, it doesn't kind of go 100% full throttle into that premise. And as a result, was I completely satisfied by the movie's conclusion? Not really. But it's definitely an experience that I would go back to again, because there was just something very mesmerizing about this overall experience, whether it be the moments of horror, which I absolutely adore, just down to the way in which they would play out. For example, you'd got this creature and just the way it would move in a certain moment, and it was creepy, it was chilling, but again it felt almost like a tease as well of what we could have potentially have had when it came to the horror. Or the very layered, nuanced performances by our cast, especially Hunter Schafer and Dan Stevens, who I found to be very mesmerizing to watch, and especially Hunter Schafer, I feel like she kind of really added that weight to this story that allowed me to remain immersed, and I felt like, along with Dan Stevens, balanced all these different tones in a way that was very beautifully done and allowed to sort of ease me into and immerse me into what is a very wacky, bizarre, strange experience. It isn't one that's completely satisfying, and it's not quite as an effective horror movie as I feel they were hoping for. For me anyway, personally, I don't think it was quite as effective when it came to the horror. There are moments that are creepy and are chilling, and I just loved how the camera would be used in these moments and focus on certain aspects of certain characters. It was quite imaginative as well, and inventive. And I think that's why I found the experience to be as compelling, really, and as mesmerizing as it was, because this was very different. And it just goes back to what I said at the beginning of the review. We're getting a lot of these horrors now that are taking these big swings and are sort of really trying something different and new, and I'm appreciating that aspect to these movies, like I have with Cuckoo, though I don't think it completely worked for me. Like I said, the conclusion and how the movie wraps up, it wasn't quite as satisfying as I wanted it to be, but it's definitely an experience that I would go back to, and I think it's worth checking out. It's definitely not for everyone, but there's a lot that I liked about it, but it, like I said, it doesn't quite work when it comes to the horror and to what it's doing with its story. So yeah, enough rambling on from me. They are my thoughts on Cuckoo, and I will be giving Cuckoo a 7 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Cuckoo, but what did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, and if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next reviews will be for Blink Twice and The Crow remake. They are my next two movie reviews. I'm really looking forward to checking them both out. The Crow, more out of curiosity. Again, it's one of those remakes that I feel like we don't really need, but I'm intrigued. And I just want to say a big thank you to all those that have subscribed recently over the last couple of weeks and who've interacted with the channel. It means an awful lot to me. And I'm hoping to hit 500 by the end of the year. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to do it, but that's my sort of goal for the end of the year. And yeah, it means an awful lot to every single one of you that have subscribed and connected to me through this channel. It means an awful lot. So yeah, thank you again for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.